After a night shift and repairing a leaky roof, I came home at 4 a.m. exhausted, my back was aching and my hands were bloody. I only wanted to lie down for an hour. Instead, I woke up to my belongings shoved into trash bags, my wallet emptied, and a note hanging on the fridge. "You're a burden. Get out." My wife stood at the door with her arms crossed, and my stepson smiled and tossed me the keys to my own truck. "Go cry somewhere else. And don't come back," he said as he slammed the door shut. I spent 3 nights in the truck. 2 months later, my phone exploded with 67 desperate messages. Looking back, the signs were always there. I just didn't want to see them. My name's Lucas, I'm 35, and until recently I was married to Marissa, 37. She had a son from a previous marriage, Dylan, 20 now, who never liked me. I figured teenagers are moody, it wasn't personal. At least, that's what I told myself for years. But what happened wasn't just typical stepfamily tension. It was a full-blown betrayal, the kind that strips you down to nothing. I worked night shifts, grueling ones, at the factory. Long hours, heavy lifting, aching muscles. I wasn't making a fortune, but I kept our bills paid, put food on the table, and tried to fix whatever broke around the house. And things did break a lot. Especially things that mysteriously ended up smashed right after Dylan had been near them. Marissa, meanwhile, started checking out emotionally. I'd tell her about my day, about how exhausted I was, about how close I was to getting a promotion, and all I'd get was a glazed-over stare or a distracted MHM. There were other red flags too. Mystery shopping bags appearing even when our credit cards were maxed out. Snide comments about how I should be making more by now. Dylan's smug attitude toward me growing bolder every month. But when you're living in it, you make excuses. You hold on to the good days, the inside jokes, the memories of when things were easier. You tell yourself you're building something that just needs a little more time. Then came that night. I just finished a brutal 12-hour shift. My body felt like it had been put through a meat grinder. It was raining, not just a drizzle, but one of those sideways, pounding storms that makes you want to crawl under a blanket and stay there. Around 3:30 a.m., my phone buzzed. It was a text from Marissa. "The roof's leaking in the living room." Great. Exactly what I needed after busting my back all night. I didn't even think about it. I drove straight home through the storm, grabbed my toolbox from the garage, and climbed up on the roof in the pitch black with nothing but my headlamp and stubbornness to light the way. The wind howled so hard I almost got knocked off twice. Rain soaked through my jacket in minutes. My hands slipped on the slick tiles, scraping and cutting against the rough edges. My knees were screaming from kneeling on the hard surface. But I found the problem: some shingles had peeled back, and I patched it up as best as I could in those miserable conditions. It took me about an hour. When I finally climbed down the ladder around 5 a.m., I could barely stand straight. My back was throbbing, my hands were bleeding in a few places, and every part of me felt like it had been hit by a truck. But despite it all, I felt a tiny flicker of pride. At least the leak was fixed. At least I'd saved the living room from water damage. Maybe Marissa would be grateful. Maybe Dylan would, for once, show a little respect. I stepped into the house, dripping wet, leaving muddy footprints on the tile. There she was, Marissa, sitting at the kitchen table, scrolling on her phone like nothing had happened. "I fixed it," I said, wiping rain from my face. "But we'll probably need someone to look at it properly once the weather clears." She didn't even look up. Just muttered, "Cool." "No, thank you." "No, are you okay?" "Nothing." I stood there for a second, waiting for something more, but it never came. Too tired to start an argument, I just mumbled that I needed to crash for a bit. My plan was to nap for an hour, maybe 2, then get up and start dealing with any water that had gotten into the house. I didn't even bother showering. I was soaked, freezing, and bone-tired. I collapsed onto our bed, still in my damp clothes, shoes and all. The second my head hit the pillow, I was out. I don't know how long I was asleep when I felt someone shaking me hard. I blinked awake to see Marissa towering over me, arms crossed, face twisted in a look of pure disgust. Standing in the doorway, arms folded and smirking like he'd won some prize, was Dylan. I panicked for a second, thinking maybe there was another emergency, another leak, a short circuit, something. I grabbed my phone off the nightstand. 9:30 a.m. I'd been asleep for barely 4 hours. That's when I noticed the 3 large trash bags sitting by the door, stuffed full. I could see my clothes poking out of the top. "What's going on?" I croaked, still groggy. Marissa's voice was ice. "You need to leave. Now." I thought it was a bad joke at first. I laughed, waiting for her to crack a smile. She didn't. "I'm done," she said. "Done carrying you. Done with your excuses. You're dead weight, Lucas. I deserve better." I sat up, the sheets cold and clammy against my skin. "Are you serious?" Before she even answered, Dylan tossed my truck keys onto the bed with a sneer. "Go cry somewhere else," he said. "Just don't come back." It wasn't until I reached for my jeans that I noticed my wallet lying open on the nightstand. Empty. The $200 cash I had tucked away? Gone. I saw red. I'm not proud of it, but I started yelling, demanding to know what the hell was going on. Marissa just stood there, arms folded, repeating the same thing over and over like a broken record. "Get out! Get out! Get out!" Dylan, emboldened, stepped right up to me, chest puffed out. This kid, who had never worked more than 2 weeks at any job, who spent his days playing video games and living off his mom, had the nerve to call me a loser. The irony would have been funny if it hadn't been so pathetic. I honestly tried to calm down. I asked if we could talk about this rationally. Maybe figure something out. Marissa pointed to the trash bags and said coldly, "You have 5 minutes, or I'm calling the cops." In a daze, I stumbled into the kitchen, needing water, needing to think. That's when I saw it, a piece of paper taped to the fridge. In Marissa's handwriting. "You're dead weight. Get out." It wasn't a heat-of-the-moment decision. This was planned. Every cynical look, every cold shoulder, every accidental broken thing, it had all been building to this. I grabbed the trash bags, my hands still raw and aching from fixing the damn roof, and tried one last time to reason with her. Tried to ask why. That's when Dylan whipped out his phone and started filming me. "Documenting your meltdown," he said with a sneer, in case I tried anything. I wasn't screaming. I wasn't breaking things. I was just standing there, heartbroken, wide open, asking why. They didn't care. They pushed me out the front door. The same door I had repaired when the hinges broke. The same porch I had painted last summer. The same house I had been paying for while they spent like kings. The door slammed behind me. I heard the deadbolt click. And just like that, I was standing in the driveway, 3 trash bags at my feet, soaked to the bone, bloody hands, aching back, homeless. I stood there for a long time. Long enough to see the blinds twitch as Marissa and Dylan peeked out at me like they were watching a stray dog they'd finally gotten rid of. Finally, I loaded my bags into my truck and drove. No destination. No plan. I ended up in the parking lot of a 24-hour supermarket, curled up in the cab of my truck, trying to sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I hoped I'd wake up in my bed at home and realize this was all some kind of nightmare. It wasn't. It was my new reality. The first 3 nights after getting kicked out were the worst of my life. I slept in my truck, parked behind Carter's apartment complex at first, then in the 24-hour supermarket parking lot. Showers were whatever I could manage at the local gym, brushing my teeth in public restrooms, trying to look halfway human before dragging myself into work. The factory wasn't forgiving, and neither was the mirror. I looked like hell. Dark circles, hollow eyes, clothes that smelled faintly of mildew no matter how many times I tried to clean them in gas station bathrooms. Carter, my coworker and one of the few genuinely good people I knew, noticed something was wrong by the second day. "You all right, man?" he asked during our lunch break. Looking at me like he already knew the answer, I tried brushing it off. Told him I was figuring stuff out. He didn't buy it. Instead, he practically dragged the whole story out of me. How Marissa had thrown me out. How Dylan had smirked like he'd just won some kind of sick game. How my truck had become my only home. Without even blinking, Carter offered me his couch. No arguments, man. Nobody deserves to be sleeping in a parking lot after what you've been through. I didn't have the words to thank him properly. Pride made me hesitate, but reality made me accept. Carter's place was small, but to me it felt like a 5-star hotel compared to my truck. It had a couch, a bathroom with hot water, a roof that didn't leak. The first night I slept there, I actually slept, no tossing and turning, no waking up cold and cramped. Still, my mind raced with everything that had happened. How had I let it get this bad? How had I missed the signs? I decided to check our joint accounts the very next morning. I borrowed Carter's laptop and logged into the bank. And there it was, 0. Not even a penny left. 7 years of savings. Small amounts scraped together, sacrifices made, vacations skipped. Gone. Stolen. I sat there staring at the screen for a long time. Then I checked our credit card balances. Both maxed out. Thousands of dollars spent in just days. It was like a final punch to the gut. I tried calling Marissa. Straight to voicemail. I texted her. Nothing. I even drove past the house once, hoping maybe, stupidly, she'd have some kind of explanation. All I saw were unfamiliar cars crammed into the driveway and loud music blasting from inside. Party. While I was living on borrowed time on Carter's couch, scraping by, Marissa and Dylan were partying in my house with my stolen money. Something inside me shifted that night. The heartbreak didn't go away, but it started to mutate. The confusion hardened into something sharper, colder. I stopped trying to call, stopped trying to text, stopped hoping for explanations or apologies. I started planning. 2 weeks later, life threw me a strange curveball. I was grabbing coffee at a gas station before my shift when I ran into Monica, Marissa's cousin. We'd never been close. Hell, Monica barely spoke to me at family gatherings, always giving me this frosty look like I wasn't good enough. I was about to just nod and keep walking when she approached me, her face pale and anxious. "Lucas," she said, almost whispering. "How are you holding up?" I shrugged, giving her a non-committal answer. "Hanging in there." Monica shifted uncomfortably, wringing her hands. Then she dropped a bomb on me. She told me Marissa had been planning to kick me out for months. That at family gatherings, she'd talk openly about it. About how I was dead weight. About how she deserved better. About how she was strategizing the best way to get rid of me without looking like the bad guy. My stomach twisted into a knot. But Monica wasn't finished. She told me the leak that night, the emergency that got me up on the roof in the middle of a thunderstorm, wasn't real. Marissa had sprayed water onto the roof with a garden hose to fake it. She wanted me exhausted, vulnerable, easy to push out the door. Hearing that, knowing I had nearly killed myself climbing around a wet, slippery roof in a storm because of a lie, made me feel physically sick. Monica also let slip that Marissa had been skimming money from our accounts for months, funneling cash into a secret account. She looked genuinely ashamed as she told me. Said she felt guilty for not warning me earlier. I just nodded numbly. There was no point getting angry at Monica now. Better late than never. But inside me, a different fire was starting to burn. The next day, I booked an appointment with a lawyer, Mr. Dalton. He was a no-nonsense, older guy with the kind of hard, weathered look that comes from decades of dealing with messy divorces and fraud cases. After listening to everything, he asked me a simple question. "Whose name is on the deed to the house?" I opened my mouth to answer, and realized I didn't know for sure. The house had belonged to my grandfather. When he passed away 5 years ago, I inherited it. Marissa and I were already married at that point, but we'd been too overwhelmed after the funeral to deal with paperwork. I assumed we had added her name somewhere along the way. Dalton's eyes narrowed. "Don't assume. Let's check." 3 days later, he called me. His voice was almost gleeful. "Lucas," he said, "the house is in your name only. It was never changed. You're the sole owner." I sat there in stunned silence, phone clutched in my hand. All this time, the house was legally mine, not ours. Mine. Even better, Dalton explained that because it was inherited, not purchased jointly, it was considered separate property in our state, not marital property. Translation. Marissa had no legal claim to it. None. Sitting there, realizing that everything she and Dylan had built their petty little kingdom on was about to crumble, I felt something I hadn't felt in weeks. Hope. Real, tangible hope. Not only could I fight back, I could win. And I planned to. Finding out the house was still legally mine was like breathing fresh air for the first time in weeks. But Mr. Dalton made one thing clear, knowing the truth wasn't enough. I needed evidence. I needed to build a case so solid that when we moved, Marissa and Dylan wouldn't even have time to blink before it crushed them. So I got to work. Every spare moment outside of my shifts at the factory was spent documenting. I pulled every bank statement from the past year, highlighting every suspicious transfer and unauthorized purchase. I printed out the credit card statements too, with all the wild spending Marissa had done leading right up to the day she threw me out. Designer bags, electronics, massive Amazon orders, new furniture, all charged to cards that were supposed to be paying for groceries and bills. Meanwhile, I'd been eating instant noodles and working double shifts just to keep the lights on. I also dug through my old text messages, emails, and even social media posts. Every ignored call, every unanswered message. Every clue that painted a picture of how they abandoned me without a second thought. Dalton advised me to not just collect it but organize it. He wanted a timeline, a clear story of betrayal backed up by receipts. So every night after work I sat at Carter's kitchen table piecing my life together like a prosecutor building a murder case. And then we found the bombshell. Dalton had been suspicious about something ever since I mentioned the strange shopping spree Marissa went on before kicking me out. He pulled my credit history. And there it was. A personal loan. $25,000. Taken out just 2 months before everything went down. I stared at the document in disbelief. The loan was secured against the house, my house, and it carried my forged signature. Dalton's voice was grim when he confirmed it. Lucas, this is straight up fraud. She committed a crime. It hit me like a freight train. Marissa hadn't just robbed me blind. She had committed felony fraud in my name. And she thought she'd gotten away with it. The rage I felt wasn't the loud, screaming kind. It was a cold, silent fury that settled deep in my chest like a stone. While I was sleeping in my truck, brushing my teeth in gas stations, Marissa and Dylan were living it up, using stolen money to renovate my house, buy Dylan a new car, and throw parties like they were royalty. Scrolling through their social media accounts only added fuel to the fire. There were photos of Dylan's new gaming setup, full tower PC, giant monitors, all the bells and whistles. Photos of freshly painted walls, new appliances, a shiny new flat screen mounted in the living room. All bought with stolen money. All inside my home. But I didn't comment. Didn't message. Didn't even like or react. I just took screenshots. One by one. Adding them to the growing evidence file Dalton was preparing. Dalton's next advice was simple. Cut every tie. I canceled the joint credit cards. Removed Marissa as a beneficiary on my insurance. Changed every password. Opened brand new bank accounts. I wasn't just preparing for battle, I was making sure they couldn't hurt me again once it all came crashing down. That's when Dalton finalized the plan. We would file for immediate possession of the house, citing fraud, theft, and financial abandonment. The goal wasn't just to evict them, it was to hold them legally accountable for the financial damage they'd caused. Dalton warned me it wouldn't be easy emotionally. They're going to panic, Lucas. They'll scream, cry, threaten. Stay calm. Stay silent. Let the sheriff do his job. I nodded. I was ready. The night before we filed, I couldn't sleep. I lay awake in Carter's tiny spare room, staring at the ceiling, feeling a strange mix of fear and excitement churning in my gut. Part of me still remembered Marissa the way she used to be, the woman I thought I'd build a life with. But that woman didn't exist anymore. Maybe she never had. Now I saw her clearly for what she was. Cold, calculating, selfish. And Dylan? He wasn't some confused kid caught in the middle. He had been an active participant in destroying me. They both had made their choices. Tomorrow, they were going to face the consequences. At 8 a.m. sharp the next morning, Dalton and I met at the courthouse. We filed all the paperwork. Fraud claims. Emergency eviction petition. Formal notice of debt recovery. The clerk stamped everything, official and undeniable. Then we handed the eviction order to the sheriff's department. Within 48 hours, Marissa and Dylan would be served. They'd have 48 more hours after that to vacate the premises or be physically removed. It was happening. Finally. That afternoon I drove by the house one more time. The purple door Marissa had painted stood out like a bruise against the faded siding. There were 2 unfamiliar cars in the driveway along with Dylan's new ride. Through the living room window I could see people milling around, laughing, drinking. They had no idea. No clue that their party was about to end. No clue that I was about to take back everything they stole from me. No clue that karma wasn't coming quietly this time. It was coming with paperwork and law enforcement, and I would be standing right there to watch it happen. Monday morning came and I was parked a block away from my house with Mr. Dalton beside me. My hands were sweating even though the air was crisp and cold. I hadn't slept much the night before, adrenaline kept jolting me awake, but I was more focused than I'd been in months. At 8:59 a.m. right on schedule, the sheriff's cruiser rolled up in front of the house. Dalton gave me a small nod. This is it. We got out and approached slowly, letting the sheriff reach the front door first. I hung back by the sidewalk, not wanting Marissa to slam the door before the paperwork could be served. Through the glass, I saw Dylan shuffle into view, confused and half-dressed in basketball shorts. Behind him, Marissa stumbled into the hallway tying a robe around herself. The sheriff knocked sharply. I watched their faces morph from confusion to panic as the stack of legal documents was handed over. Dylan's mouth dropped open. Marissa grabbed the papers, her eyes darting frantically across the pages. Then she saw me. Our eyes locked through the glass. And in that instant I saw it. The realization. The terror. She knew she'd lost. The sheriff spoke calmly but firmly. They had 48 hours to vacate. Failure to comply would mean forcible removal and potential criminal charges. Marissa lost it. She started screaming how it was her house, how I was harassing her, how she would call the cops. The sheriff, who was the cops, didn't flinch. He simply pointed back at the papers, said everything was legal and binding and that any disputes had to go through court. Dylan, emboldened by his mother's meltdown, tried to square up to me. Tried to step into my face like he had the day they kicked me out. The sheriff shut that down immediately, stepping between us and warning Dylan he'd be arrested if he laid a finger on me. Dalton stayed calm, laying out the facts. The house was legally mine. Marissa and Dylan had committed financial fraud. They had stolen from our joint accounts and forged my signature. Everything was documented. Watching their faces fall as reality crushed them was, honestly, better than any revenge fantasy I'd ever imagined. Marissa quickly switched tactics, going from fury to crocodile tears. She started sobbing, pleading, begging me to be reasonable. Said we had history. Said she loved me once. I just stood there silent. Dylan made one last, desperate mistake. He sneered at me and called me a pathetic loser, said I'd come crawling back once I realized I was nothing without them. That broke whatever last shred of sympathy I might have had. I looked him dead in the eyes and said, "You have 48 hours to get your crap out of my house. After that, whatever's left is going to the dump." The sheriff warned them again. No damaging the property. No stealing appliances or fixtures. Everything inside the house now belonged to me legally. We left them standing there, broken, furious, humiliated, clutching eviction papers and trying to figure out where their perfect little party had gone wrong. The next 48 hours were a flood of calls and texts. From Marissa. From Dylan. From unknown numbers. At first, it was threats. Then bargaining. Then outright panic. I didn't respond to a single one. Per Dalton's advice, every communication was ignored or forwarded to him directly. Marissa even managed to slip a handwritten note under the door of Carter's place, begging me to talk to her, promising she would make it right. Too little, too late. When the deadline hit, Dalton, the sheriff, and I returned to the house. A U-Haul sat in the driveway. Most of the cars were gone. So was Dylan's new car, repossessed, most likely. Marissa stood on the porch, eyes red and swollen, clutching a worn duffel bag. As I walked past her, she whispered, "You'll regret this." I didn't even look at her. Inside, the house was a mess. They'd left in a hurry. Unfinished renovations. Trash piled in corners. Scratches on the floors where they dragged furniture. Some walls had dents in them. One bathroom sink was cracked. It didn't matter. The house, battered and bruised as it was mine again. Dalton documented everything for potential civil action. Every broken fixture. Every stolen item. We had a mountain of evidence. And Marissa still had a fraud case looming over her head. The $25,000 loan with my forged signature was being investigated separately. She wasn't getting away clean. Not even close. That night, I sat on the floor of the empty living room. No furniture, no TV, no nothing. And felt something I hadn't felt in months. Peace. It wasn't victory. It wasn't revenge. It was freedom. Over the next few days, I started rebuilding. Real rebuilding. Carter and some of the guys from work came over with beer, tools, and time. We patched up the roof properly. We fixed the walls. We installed a cheap but sturdy new sink. Every repair was like reclaiming a little more of myself. And then something unexpected happened. One evening, around sunset, there was a knock at the door. It was Rachel, Marissa's sister. I almost didn't recognize her. She looked smaller somehow, more fragile. She asked if she could come in. Against my better judgment, I let her. She sat at the kitchen counter, the same one Marissa used to lean against while ignoring me, and broke down crying. Rachel told me she'd left her abusive husband, Ethan. Said seeing me stand up for myself had inspired her to finally walk away. She was scared, broke, and desperate. Not asking for money, just asking for advice. I made a few calls, found her a spot at a women's shelter Carter's friend volunteered with. Helped her move her essentials into a storage unit. I wasn't helping her for Marissa's sake. I was helping because she deserved it, because she hadn't wronged me. Funny how things work out. I heard through the grapevine that after Rachel left, Ethan blamed Marissa and Dylan for breaking up his family. And kicked them out too. Now they had no house. No money. No car. No friends willing to take them in. The people who threw me out like trash? Now they were the ones discarded. Karma really is undefeated. I sit on my back porch now, drinking a cold beer as the sun sets. The house still needs work. My bank account's still recovering. There's still legal stuff ahead. But I'm free. Stronger. Wiser. Every day, the anger fades a little more. Every day, I feel a little more peace. And every day, I remind myself. Some bridges aren't just burned. They're nuked from orbit. And I'm never looking back.